Whispers echoed through the corridors of Balmoral as the wind howled outside. What looked like a routine royal evening became the stage for a moment that would upend everything. Behind closed doors, Charles made a move that even his most trusted advisors didn't anticipate. And Camilla? She remained blissfully unaware until it was too late. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. It was well past midnight when the drawing room doors quietly latched shut. The air carried a chill, not from the Scottish weather but from the weight of what was about to unfold. Charles stood by the grand fireplace, his posture uncharacteristically rigid, a small velvet box resting on the antique table beside him. It wasn't an heirloom brought out for tradition or formality. It was something far more personal, far more dangerous. Across from him sat Catherine, her face composed, but her eyes uncertain. There had been whispers about shifting dynamics, about subtle power reconfigurations within the monarchy, but none of it had prepared her for this moment. As Charles reached for the box, silence swallowed the room. He didn't speak at first. He simply opened the lid and let the ring catch the firelight. Its deep gold band, engraved with the royal crest, pulsed with history, weighty, intimate, almost sacred. The royal crest ring had long been whispered about behind palace curtains. It was said to be more than a piece of jewelry. It was a symbol of the inner circle, of silent authority, an artifact passed through lines of favor, not blood. Some called it the sovereign's hidden seal. Few had seen it. Fewer had ever worn it. Charles's expression was unreadable, caught between duty and defiance. And then came the words, quietly spoken, yet thunderous in their implication. This ring isn't for ceremony. It's for survival. The gravity of his choice struck Catherine with a force she hadn't anticipated. It wasn't just a token of respect or a ceremonial handover. It was a sign of trust beyond protocol, a deliberate declaration of where the future lay. She said nothing at first. Her fingers hovered above the box, as though touching it too soon might ignite something irreversible. Charles watched her with the gaze of a man who had made peace with the consequences. He spoke of the instability within the family, the cracks in the foundation, and the urgent need to preserve what was left of the crown's credibility. He spoke not as a king, but as a father, as a guardian of legacy. Catherine, though still reeling, began to understand the depth of what he was offering and what he was asking her to shoulder. Accepting that ring meant accepting an allegiance that would shift the palace's balance of power forever. But the most shocking part wasn't the gifting, it was the one person kept utterly in the dark, whose fury would soon shake the palace walls. The sun rose over Windsor, and Camilla's world remained intact until it wasn't. She laughed over breakfast, sent out holiday cards, and smiled at photographers. Little did she know, a centuries-old heirloom had already slipped through her fingers in the dead of night. There was a certain stillness to that morning, almost cinematic in its calm. Camilla walked through the corridors of Windsor with the unshakable confidence of a queen consort who believed her position was finally unquestioned. The storm of past scandals had seemingly passed. Her public image had softened. The whispers had quieted. But beneath the polished veneer of the morning routine, something monumental had just occurred. And not a single soul around her dared speak of it. The royal crest ring, once destined for the sovereign's chosen confidant, had already left Charles's hand. Yet here, she was, blissfully unaware, discussing flower arrangements for the spring gala. The irony was cruel. Cameras followed her at a public engagement, capturing her every move, smiles, handshakes, laughter. Yet behind those lenses, insiders were already murmuring. They had seen the reports, the private meeting, the unspoken shift. Something had changed and no one dared say it aloud. But the tension was there, like electricity. Her aides, once lively and forthcoming, were now exchanging glances, whispering when she turned her back, hesitating when she asked casual questions. They were loyal, but no longer certain, and uncertainty in a royal household is as dangerous as open rebellion. She sensed it faintly, a shift in temperature, a mood she couldn't name. The missed call from Charles that morning should have said enough. He had never missed their morning check-ins, but no explanation came. Just silence, followed by a vague text, "We'll talk later." Later never came. That silence hung like fog around her, thick and unrelenting. Still, she moved forward with grace, unaware that the one gesture she had expected, a formal declaration of her place, had just been stripped from her without a whisper of warning. Elsewhere, Catherine was already preparing for her next engagement. She, too, maintained a composed face, but beneath her gloves was the ring hidden, pulsing like a secret ready to detonate. The quiet weight of it had already shifted the power balance. And still, the public remained in the dark, just like Camilla, but not for long. As Camilla continued smiling for cameras, another royal prepared to reveal the ring in a setting that would ensure the whole court took notice. It started with a simple wave. But when Catherine lifted her hand during a children's charity event, a glint of gold caught the light, and with it, the attention of eagle-eyed courtiers. The royal Crest ring. Was never meant to be seen in public, until now. At first it seemed inconsequential. A fleeting shimmer, a barely noticeable detail in a flurry of photographs. But within hours, the palace's silent channels buzzed with suspicion. Screenshots zoomed in. The ring's surface, marked with an ancient insignia, triggered a quiet frenzy. For those who knew what to look for, there was no doubt. The markings were unmistakable, the long-lost crest of the House of Windsor. It hadn't been seen in decades, rumoured to be kept in private vaults, reserved only for the one member of the family trusted to carry not just title, but legacy. No announcement had been made. No ceremony had taken place. And yet, there it was boldly, subtly displayed on the finger of the Princess of Wales. That single image would become the catalyst for a royal reckoning. Behind closed doors, panic began to swell. Courtiers exchanged knowing looks. Messages were sent in code. The question wasn't who wore the ring anymore. It was how and why it had resurfaced without anyone being briefed. Rumours spread like wildfire. Had Charles acted alone? Was this the beginning of a quiet transition of power? Or worse, had Camilla been blindsided? The senior staff, who had served 3 generations of royals, watched in disbelief as the lines of loyalty quietly redrew themselves overnight. No official statement came, no clarification. Just silence. The kind of silence that speaks louder than proclamations. Catherine, for her part, remained calm, serene, almost chillingly composed. She said nothing, offered no explanation, gave no interviews. But her silence was not void of meaning. It was deliberate, weighty, and unmissable to those who understood palace language. The ring stayed on her hand for the entire engagement. Never hidden, never flaunted. Just there. A quiet signal, a gentle assertion, a challenge wrapped in traditio. What shook the palace even more was who noticed and who didn't. Charles had disappeared into back-to-back private meetings. William, when asked, deflected with vague diplomacy. And Camilla? She hadn't seen it, because she hadn't been told. Her schedule had been filled with low-profile events, away from press coverage. Her aides, usually sharp and observant, had been deliberately left out of internal communications. And according to insiders, it wasn't incompetence, it was orchestration. The monarchy, it seemed, was dividing itself in real time, but the woman most invested in royal symbols and tradition wasn't watching television that day. She was being shielded. And that, insiders say, was no accident. In a monarchy built on tradition, secrets are the deadliest weapons. As the truth about the ring crept toward the surface, a quiet faction emerged, loyal not to Camilla, but to the future queen. And their plan? Keep the current queen consort utterly isolated from the truth. The conspiracy wasn't born overnight. It had been brewing for months, perhaps even years. Ever since the passing of Queen Elizabeth, there had been subtle shifts beneath the surface, realignments of loyalty, silent acknowledgements of who truly carried the crown's future in their presence, not just in their title. Catherine had earned something deeper than admiration, trust. And when Charles made the unannounced transfer of the royal crest ring, it wasn't a decision made in solitude. He had already built a circle of silence around it, one that understood what was at stake and how precarious the balance of perception could be. That circle included some of the most seasoned courtiers, figures who had once served the late queen herself. These weren't reckless advisors looking to cause chaos. They were guardians of legacy. To them, the choice was obvious. Camilla had risen through circumstance. Catherine had risen through character. Their allegiance to the late monarch hadn't faded with her death. In fact, it had only intensified, and they saw the ring as a continuation of Elizabeth's unwritten wishes. Their mission was clear: protect the transition no matter the cost. That meant silence, misdirection, and above all, keeping Camilla uninformed until it was too late to reverse the move. Orders were whispered, not recorded. Digital memos were intentionally vague. Charles, in meetings, spoke in carefully coded language. If Camilla asked about Catherine's sudden rise in public visibility, the answer was always temporary, routine, or approved weeks ago. The brief mention of the ring in a corridor discussion was cut off with a quick glance. Aides refused to comment. Aides disappeared. Even the palace press team received internal notes to avoid publishing high-resolution photos of Catherine's right hand. The ring was everywhere, yet nowhere. But concealment has its limits, and tension has a way of poisoning even the most polished atmospheres. At breakfast one morning, Camilla sensed it. The servants were quieter. The conversation was stiffer. Charles, seated across from her, seemed distracted. When she asked directly whether something had changed, he smiled too easily and replied, "Nothing that concerns you." That sentence clanged like a warning bell in her mind. She wasn't used to being brushed aside. She wasn't used to being out of the loop. Something was off, and she knew it, and then came the slip. A young maid, barely trained in discretion, whispered to another while refilling teacups, unaware that Camilla was still within earshot. Just 6 words. "It's on her finger now." The air left the room. Camilla looked up, her hand frozen mid-reach. She said nothing, but the silence that followed screamed through her bones. Something sacred had been taken. And it hadn't passed through her hands. And as Camilla began to feel the walls shifting, she turned to Charles, demanding answers. But what she heard next shattered her illusion of power. It was supposed to be a quiet evening. But when Camilla confronted Charles in their private quarters, what unfolded was a storm years in the making. He didn't deny it. He didn't defend it. And then came the blow. "You were never meant to wear it." The words didn't land like anger. They landed like judgment. For a moment, she thought she had misheard. Surely this was a misunderstanding, another case of palace gossip running out of control. But the look on his face told her everything. This wasn't rumor. This wasn't confusion. This was deliberate. And it pierced deeper than any scandal she had weathered before. Her disbelief turned to heat. Questions poured out faster than she could contain them: why she was kept in the dark, why the ring had resurfaced, why Catherine was suddenly positioned as if destiny had quietly chosen her. Charles listened, torn between patience and exhaustion. And then he said it plainly: the ring had been set aside long ago, reserved not for rank, but for the one whose presence could steady the crown when everything else faltered. Not for convenience, not for appearance, for worth. The confession cracked something inside her. She had fought her way through decades of scrutiny, through hostility, through criticism that never seemed to fade. And yet, here he was telling her that, despite everything, she had never even been considered. Anger surged. She accused him of rewriting history, of allowing old ghosts to dictate new loyalties, of letting Catherine manipulate sympathy into power. She demanded to know when the decision had been made, who had influenced him, who had whispered that she was not enough. His voice stayed quiet, but each sentence struck like thunder. He spoke of legacy, continuity, and the brutal truth that perception can build a monarchy or burn it to ashes. He admitted that the ring symbolized not affection, but survival. And survival required someone the public believed in without hesitation. The tension thickened. Marriage collided with duty. Emotion collided with calculation. Camilla felt the humiliation rising, not because the ring was gone, but because she had been eluded from the conversation entirely. She reminded him of sacrifices, of loyalty, of years spent rehabilitating an image that had once been beyond repair. Charles didn't dismiss that. He acknowledged every battle she had fought. But then he spoke the sentence that changed everything: "This isn't about you anymore." With those words, he separated the personal from the institution, drawing a line she could not cross. It wasn't rejection of her as a wife. It was rejection of her as the vessel for the crown's future. And it stung with a cruelty only truth can carry. The argument didn't explode. It sank. It hollowed. It left silence where certainty once lived. Yet beneath that silence, something colder began to form inside Camilla, not surrender, but resolve. If she had been cut out, she would find out when, how, and by whom. She would pull at every thread, dig through every whisper, and trace every decision back to its source. Humiliated yet unbowed, Camilla set her sights on uncovering the entire truth. And the trail led her not to the king but to the woman who now wore the crown's secret. The ring wasn't just gold, it carried weight, legacy, and the ghost of Diana. As Catherine stared at the ancient crest in the mirror, she wrestled with a truth no one saw coming. Accepting the ring meant stepping into a storm, and possibly reigniting old wounds. Alone in a room that had once belonged to another Princess of Wales, Catherine felt the past reaching through the silence. The royal crest ring pulsed with unspoken history, its presence on her finger almost too heavy to bear. It wasn't just a token from Charles. It was a statement, a seismic shift wrapped in tradition. But behind the formality was something deeper, darker. The ring had skipped a generation of queens, bypassed those who held power by title alone. It had once belonged to a woman adored by the public, yet shut out from the institution's deepest inner sanctums. And now it sat on Catherine's hand, quietly challenging every unspoken rule that had once excluded Diana. In that stillness, memories collided. Diana had been celebrated by the world but kept at arm's length behind palace walls. Her charm had been feared, her independence punished. Catherine knew this history not just through stories but through the subtle glances, the unspoken warnings, the caution embedded in every step she took. And now here she was, bearing the very symbol Diana was never allowed to claim. That weight didn't inspire pride, it sparked doubt. Was she ready to wear something so sacred, so politically volatile? Or was she being used as a pawn in a war much larger than she had imagined? Doubt turned to fear, not for herself but for what might come next. Camilla would not take this lightly. She knew how power worked, and more dangerously she knew how revenge operated. Catherine had been cautious her entire royal life, building trust, avoiding conflict. But the ring had changed the rules. This was no longer about protocol. It was about survival. She couldn't remain silent. The longer she waited, the more distorted the narrative would become. And yet, speaking too soon could ignite a firestorm she couldn't control. William was the only one she could turn to, but even he wasn't immune to the pressure. He supported her, yes, but she could see the conflict behind his eyes, his loyalty to his father, his wariness of the backlash, his own scars from a family fractured by secrecy. But still he stood beside her, not to shield her, but to steady her. And in that moment, Catherine made her choice. The time for hiding was over. If the ring was to be seen, let it be seen with purpose. With Camilla sharpening her knives behind closed doors, Catherine prepared for the inevitable storm, the moment when private betrayal will explode into public spectacle. All eyes turned to the grand staircase. At the palace gala for Commonwealth unity, the crowd froze not because of a speech or a scandal, but because of what was on Catherine's finger. And in that moment, Camilla finally saw it. The air was heavy with formality, the kind of ceremonial grandeur that disguised tension with pageantry. The palace had pulled every string to ensure the night would run smoothly, flawless lighting, dignitaries lined in perfect order, and 1,000 eyes trained on the royal family. Camilla, dressed in one of her most opulent gowns, moved with the ease of someone certain of her role. She smiled, gave nods of acknowledgement, and accepted compliments with trained elegance. But beneath the polished exterior, she was scanning the room for Charles, for Catherine, for answers. She had heard too much in whispers and seen too little in daylight. Tonight she expected clarity. What she got was catastrophe. Catherine's arrival wasn't immediate. It was orchestrated, delayed, calculated. And when she entered, the reaction was swift and seismic. Her steps were measured, deliberate, not rushed, not hesitant. The camera flashes began as a ripple, then escalated into a frenzy. Not because of her dress, not even because of her presence, but because of her right hand. There, glinting under crystal chandeliers, was the unmistakable band of gold, the royal crest ring, uncovered, exposed, unapologetically worn. The silence in the ballroom was audible. It was the kind of moment where tradition collided with reality, and reality left no room for ambiguity. Gasps echoed through the marble walls. Advisors whispered frantically. Phones buzzed with emergency instructions. Courtiers, trained to conceal shock, visibly faltered. The ring had been hidden, debated, denied, and now it was public visible proof that something monumental had happened. Ed behind closed doors. That power had quietly shifted, and the announcement hadn't come from the throne, but from a finger. Catherine's face remained calm, unreadable. But everything about her posture screamed defiance wrapped in composure. She didn't flaunt the ring, she didn't need to. It spoke louder than any declaration. Camilla's reaction was instant, her eyes locked on the ring, then on Catherine. Her smile vanished. Her composure cracked not in a scream, not in a stumble, but in a slow-burning fury that was far more terrifying. Her exit came quickly, cutting through guests who tried to pretend they hadn't seen what they had. She didn't say a word, she didn't need to. Her silence confirmed everything. For Camilla, this wasn't just a breach of protocol, it was a personal betrayal, made theatrical. And for Catherine, it wasn't about revenge. It was about inevitability. The palace had tried to keep the storm contained. Catherine had just let the lightning strike. The royal press office went into emergency mode, but the damage was done. And in the days that followed, headlines weren't the only things unraveling. As the media frenzy swirled and Camilla withdrew from view, insiders say the monarchy began a subtle but deliberate restructuring. Behind the polished exterior, a quiet recalibration was underway, and Catherine now stood at its center. The silence following the gala was deafening. Camilla's absence was immediate and conspicuous. One day she was expected at a charity visit. The next, her name was quietly removed from the itinerary. No official statement was issued, no apology, just absence, and in royal circles, absence always signals something more. Whispers quickly replaced facts. Windsor staff reported seeing Camilla depart in haste, her usual entourage stripped down to bare minimum. She left with no press in tow, no photographers alerted. For someone who had fought tooth and nail for her place beside the king, this withdrawal was nothing short of symbolic retreat. Meanwhile, behind closed doors, a different energy was building. William, typically measured and cautious, was seen holding a string of unannounced meetings with Charles and high-ranking courtiers, many of whom had served under Queen Elizabeth. These weren't casual conversations, they were strategic. The tone inside the palace had shifted. Something old was being dismantled quietly, and something new was being assembled right in its place. And at the heart of it stood Catherine. Her public engagements tripled within weeks. She was no longer just attending events, she was headlining them. Her presence became the monarchy's primary message: grace, strength, stability. What shocked even long-standing insiders was the reorientation of loyalty. Individuals once tethered to Camilla's camp, press liaisons, private secretaries, even stylists, began requesting reassignment. No announcements, just quiet transfers. Some cited health, others burnout. But those close to the center knew what it meant. The ground had shifted, and no one wanted to be caught on the wrong side of history. The royal crest ring, once the subject of whispers, had become front-page symbolism. Headlines no longer asked questions, they made declarations. Catherine, the real future queen. Public opinion had made its decision. The crown, as far as many were concerned, had already chosen. And then there was Charles. His silence became a story of its own. He offered no comment, no public correction, no defense of Camilla. He didn't refute the headlines, nor did he rebuke the speculation. To those watching closely, it became clear that the king had chosen a path that required no words. A nod to inevitability, a quiet acceptance of the future unfolding in front of him. The monarchy, once rigid in its hierarchy, was bending towards something or someone new. But as one chapter closed, another prepared to begin, with whispers of a second heirloom soon to change hands, one even older than the ring. Just when the palace thought it had settled the dust, a sealed envelope from Queen Elizabeth's personal vault was uncovered, addressed not to Charles, but to Catherine. And within it, a revelation that could silence every critic or spark a fresh royal war. The vault had remained untouched since the Queen's passing, sealed by iron protocol and guarded with silent reverence. But as archivists catalogued final belongings, they found it a thick envelope, yellowed with age, bearing the late monarch's unmistakable handwriting. Not addressed to the reigning king, not to a council or a collection of heirs, but to Catherine. No titles, no formality, just her name, underlined once, deliberately. The moment it was discovered, protocol shattered. An immediate summons was issued. Catherine was called to a private room in the West Wing, the kind of chamber rarely used unless something truly historic was at hand. No press, no aides, just silence, anticipation, and the scent of unraveling destiny. Camilla got wind of it quickly. She wasn't on the call sheet. She hadn't been informed. And that was by design. She made a move to intervene, sent her senior aide to the room, tried to issue a formal request for access but was stopped cold. Denied without explanation. What happened inside that room would remain private, but what emerged from it would leave ripples across generations. The envelope was opened by Catherine's own hand. Inside, a note written in Queen Elizabeth's unmistakable pen, simple, personal, timed to be delivered only under very specific circumstances. It read, "For the one who wears the crest with grace, may this guide your strength." Beneath the letter was a velvet pouch, and within it, a pendant historians had only spoken of in theory, a piece believed to have belonged to Queen Victoria herself. Not catalogued, not displayed, hidden away, reserved. The pendant wasn't just an artifact, it was a message, a second, silent inheritance. A gesture that confirmed what had already been whispered, that the late Queen had looked beyond succession charts and titles and chosen with instinct, with wisdom, with foresight. This wasn't about bypassing Charles, it was about crowning Catherine in spirit, long before the public had seen the signs. The vault had offered no secrets for Charles, none for Camilla, only Catherine. And in the hierarchy of symbols, that spoke louder than declarations. The palace didn't issue a press release, the pendant wasn't shown. But within 24 hours, subtle changes began. Catherine's role elevated again, more visibility, more authority, more presence in ceremonial planning. Camilla remained in the shadows, her public schedule trimmed, her office quiet. The narrative no longer needed shaping, it was shaping itself. The past had handed its legacy to the future, and the future had a name. And so, as the storm clears and the monarchy reshapes in silence, the question remains, how much more has already been decided, without the public ever knowing? Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.